You know, I'm not afraid of heights, so that wasn't really an issue for me in this movie. But the idea of an all-day hike, hello everybody and welcome back to the horror movie syllabus. My name is Professor Victor, and I'll be your host as we go through all of the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out the introduction video. There's a link to it in the description below, and it's going to give you a pretty good sense of what we do here at the horror movie syllabus. In short, we look at a particular subgenre of horror, we pick 3 movies from that subgenre to explore. That's what we do. But this is our Is It Syllabus-Worthy series. This is where I take a recommendation from you guys. A horror movie I've never seen before that you mentioned in the comments to one of my videos. I watch it for the very first time, and then I'll let you know. Is it syllabus-worthy? Did I think there was something in there that was interesting enough, noteworthy enough, etc., to be on the horror movie syllabus? And today, the movie that we're talking about is Vertige, and it's also called High Lane in English, and hopefully I'm pronouncing it correctly. But this is a movie that was recommended to me by Ange Alexio. Again, hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. Ange recommended this in our New French Extremity video, so it's a French film. And they recommended it along with a few other movies as contenders for the syllabus, for the New French Extremity subgenre. Now, if you've seen that video, you know New French Extremity is something I love quite a bit. This was a movie I hadn't heard of before, and Ange was saying that this was a strong contender for the syllabus for that subgenre specifically. So I'm thinking New French Extremity, right? But that's all I know. That's all I've got to go on, and presumably that it is in French because it's got a French title and it's for New French Extremity. So this movie wasn't the easiest thing to track down. Honestly, it's taken me a long time to find this. I've been saying that a lot lately because a lot of the movies I've been trying to check out have been a little bit harder to find. But this one was particularly difficult to find. Thanks to Sarah for getting me a copy of it. But this one took some time to get to, but I finally got a chance to check it out. And did I love it? Did I hate it? Well, let's find out. Like I said, the movie that we're looking at today is Vertige. Vertige came out in 2009. It's also known as High Lane, and it was directed by a man named Abel Ferry. And I believe this is his feature film debut, his feature debut. I looked up his resume. I didn't recognize any of the other movies on there. He'd done some shorts and things like that before this one. But this was the first movie he made, the first feature film movie he made. And he's kind of coming out gangbusters right off the gate, just to give you a little bit of a clue as to how this, this review is going to go. But if you haven't seen the movie before, the movie's about a group of friends that decide to go rock climbing, but when they get to their location, turns out that the location's closed. But of course, they decide to go ahead and go anyways because they have that sense of adventure and they have that recklessness that movies require. They go on their trip, and the hijinks start to abound in terms of climbing incidents, but then at some point they realize they're being followed or stalked, and they might be in more danger than just from the elements and the cliffs. And we're going to go ahead and stop there so as to not spoil the movie for you. But this is a really impressive debut for a first-time director because it's rather well made. It's a really good-looking movie, in no small part due to the cinematography and the location that they picked. Now, when I look at the reviews for this movie, it indicates that the mountain range that they're in is supposed to be in Croatia, but then I couldn't find any evidence that they filmed outside of France. So I'm not really clear on exactly where this was shot, but it's gorgeous. The locale is wonderful. It's really just scenic, and the landscapes and the whole atmosphere, the whole location is just very rich, very gorgeous, very beautiful and serene, yet also threatening and dangerous because they are very, very high up. I mentioned earlier about, not being afraid of heights, but if you're afraid of heights, this movie's going to do a number on you, especially in the first half, because they are really doing a good job of leveraging this location and the danger, the inherent danger involved in the altitude as part of the tension building in this movie. It's shot wonderfully. The camera work is a combination of wide shots that really give you an idea of the scope and the height and the actual danger, and then like handheld, and I think even maybe GoPro cameras that are being used to kind of give you more of the up close and personal, like intense, putting you in that situation feel. It's a really nice blend of camera work, again, by a first-time director who really did a good job of using very effective camera shots to convey the sense of tension and dread that just the climbing alone is leading to. It reminded me a little bit of The Descent in a sense that, the beginning of the movie is really kind of focused on an actual activity, a sport, if you will, that is inherently dangerous, and the danger is conveyed really well just by them doing that. You could actually watch a whole movie of that without having anything else happen, and it would be very effective because they've just shot it so well. The climbing scenes are pretty great here. There are a lot of scenes that show real scary stuff, especially again if you are afraid of heights, even if you're not, because you're not stupid, you don't want to die by falling. And this movie does a really good job of making it very clear how dangerous this is, and the dangers are earned too. It's not like a lot of like really crazy weird stuff happening that puts these people in peril. It really is stuff that seems plausible. Now, admittedly, all of this stuff happening in one trip maybe feels a little implausible. It's kind of like in the aggregate, it feels like it's a little ridiculous that all these things could go wrong. But each individual thing on its own feels pretty realistic. The bridge scene in particular is a standout as something that A, looks amazing. It's shot super well. And B, is really, really scary. It really is kind of terrifying. And C, the what goes wrong with it, I buy it. I believe it. I believe it's a very possible scenario. So the setups of the various perilous hijinks that they wind up in when they're doing the rock climbing is really solid. It's shot really, really well. And they've done a great job of keeping the tension ratcheted up pretty early on in the movie. It doesn't take long to get to the really harrowing stuff that they're going to get themselves into. So that's pretty cool. Now, where there's a bit of a challenge for me are the characters that are in peril. The characters are probably the weak spot of the movie for me. They are generally trite and for the most part not very likable in the aggregate, that entire group. There's not really anybody that you're tremendously rooting for. There's various levels of dislike for them, frankly, but none of them are the ones that you're really identifying with or hoping to make it. Frankly, they start off by making some bad decisions. Just the idea of going forward, even though the trail is supposedly closed, is a bad decision, and other bad decisions get made throughout the movie that you're just kind of like want to pull your hair out for. So that's a little frustrating right off the bat. And then, like I said, none of them are particularly likable. But there's the one boyfriend that is particularly annoying. He is like the one that's kind of shown to be afraid of everything, and he's kind of weak, and he's jealous because his girlfriend is talking to her. I guess it's her ex. It's a little unclear to me, but I think it's her ex that seems to be still interested in her, and so he's feeling kind of jealous, and so he's doing stupid things out of jealousy instead of just being smart. And he's constantly like the pain in the group with the thorn in their side, and it's hard because there's never really any redeeming qualities shown to this character, but I'm still expected to believe that this woman is dating him, as implausible as it may seem. Like even like physically speaking, if I'm being clear, the ex-boyfriend's a very handsome dude, and this guy kind of looks like a little weakling, and he's annoying, and it's just like why did she fall in love with this guy? Why is she with this guy? It doesn't really ever explain to me, and I'm just kind of expected to believe that. And that's the funny thing about this is there's not really a backstory given for that, but there's all this other backstory stuff that's woven into the movie, sometimes through flashbacks, which are admittedly kind of shoehorned in. It kind of is a little jarring when the flashbacks kind of come in, and they're kind of the editing of it's a little bit weird, but these flashbacks show a little bit of backstory, in particular for this one girl who's dating this guy, and they don't ever really pay off. There's really not a lot. There's like a lot of backstory for this one girl in particular that I guess kind of pays off at the end, but it really doesn't matter. There's really not a lot of depth to these characters, and you don't really need there to be, but it would be helpful if they were a little bit more likable. They are not the most relatable people, and it's kind of interesting how the ones that are probably the most capable are the ones that start to go first. And that's kind of good for the movie because it leads to more increased tension. But the thing is the movie switches about halfway or maybe closer to two-thirds of the way through. It switches a little bit and it stops being about them being lost and trapped in the wilderness and in this mountain trying to climb their way out, and becomes more of a standard like horror movie. The movie makes the switch from this climbing tension movie to this kind of backwoods killers movie, and No, I don't have a problem with Blackwood's Killers. I like those movies, but this one's not particularly memorable or noteworthy. Like his aesthetic, his look isn't particularly unique or anything like that. And when you look at the reviews of this movie, you see a lot of comparisons to movies like Wrong Turn or The Hills Have Eyes, which I can see that. Although I would argue they do that better because the whole movie's focused in that scenario. And in this case, the killer's arrival is it's just it shifts to a different kind of movie, and a lot of people clock this as saying that the first half of the movie is better than the second half of the movie, and that the movie kind of downshifts a little bit. And I'd be inclined to agree with that. It's a common criticism that I think I kind of echo, though not nearly as strongly. A lot of people say the second half sucks, or if the movie like runs out of steam or something like that. I don't think that. I think the second half's not bad. I don't think it's nearly as bad as people in the reviews are saying. But I do think that there's a noticeable shift in the tension between the harrowing climbing incidents in the first half of the movie and then the stalking and brutality in the second half of the movie. And speaking of that brutality, this was a movie that Ange had recommended as New French Extremity. And for me, kind of falls short of that because the brutality isn't quite what I expect to see in a New French Extremity movie. A movie like, Inside or Martyrs or something like that. This movie feels less. So there is some brutality in here. There is some torture and stuff like that too. But it's only okay to me, for lack of a better way of putting it. Like, it didn't feel quite as gruesome and visceral as some of the other movies that I've mentioned, some of the other movies we talked about in the New French Extremity video. This one felt lighter than that. Not to say, though, that the movie isn't working. I would say it's kind of on par with something like A Wrong Turn or Hills Have Eyes in terms of violence and terror. I do think that's probably a pretty good match, a pretty good comp for it. But does that make it syllabus worthy? Let's find out. So, is Vertige, aka High Lane, syllabus worthy? Probably not. I mean, I kind of alluded to this, but it doesn't really measure up to the New French Extremity bangers that we talked about in our video. Like, some of those other New French Extremity movies are just so great. They're so visceral, they're so shocking and disturbing and so noteworthy. And it's probably worth noting that when I hear people talk about New French Extremity, this is not one that gets mentioned very frequently. This is kind of definitely a lower, like a lower tier or deeper cut, off the radar kind of thing. It really, like I said, I question whether it actually qualifies for the New French Extremity. Some of the stuff we talked about in that video about, political allegories and stuff like that. Some of the stuff just doesn't seem like it's quite there in this movie. So I quibble with it being a New French Extremity qualifier in the first place. But even if it is, it doesn't beat out the ones that are there. So that in that sense, it's going to fall short for syllabus worthiness. But could it fit somewhere else? There's an argument to be made here, and a pretty solid one, that the nature and isolation subgenre would be a good place for this to be because of the whole first half climbing stuff. It's really pretty intense and very, very effective. Now, again, if you're afraid of heights, this movie's going to do a number on you. The way it's shot, it's just really impressive. But the second half really undercuts that a bit because it shifts into a different kind of movie. It shifts into more of like a backwoods killer kind of movie. And again, I don't have a problem with that, but only the first half of the movie really feels like nature and isolation. After that, it kind of goes away from that. But you can make a similar case for The Descent, which I did put in the nature and isolation subgenre. So I wouldn't disqualify it from that. I'm just saying that the second half does undercut the effectiveness of the first half nature and isolation subgenre qualification because it's no longer about them being isolated and trapped and stuck in nature and in danger. It's something entirely different at that point. Now, the movie does have its fans. The reviews are mid to decent. Like, they're not glowing reviews, but then nobody seems like they're hating on it either. It's like in the mid range. And the reviews tend to compare this to other movies like Wrong Turn and Hills Have Eyes and Cliffhanger, frankly. And yeah, I see all of that. And does that undercut its syllabus worthiness, like its uniqueness? A little bit, I guess. And then the fact that it was so hard to find and that people don't seem to be talking about it does, again, kind of undercut it from a reputational standpoint. It's not a kind of movie that has a big reputation as being a great or anything like that. So all of these things in the aggregate make me think it basically falls a little bit short. That said, Still a really good watch. It took a long time to find this one, but it was worth the wait. This movie is pretty fun, especially that first half is really harrowing, but even the second half, very enjoyable. All of the tension in the movie works for me really well. The camera work is really, really good, and I wish that the characters were a little bit better drawn. But that's not the biggest of complaint. It doesn't derail the movie for me. Overall, really fun watch, really good time, and I would definitely recommend it if you can find it. But that's going to do it for our exploration into Vertige, aka High Lane. Like I said, worth the time, worth the watch, worth a little bit of effort to try to track it down, frankly. But if you're looking for a hardcore new French extremity movie, manage your expectations because that's not really what you're going to get here in this movie. And right now, what you're going to get is a horror Trivial Pursuit card. It's that time in the video where I like to read a horror Trivial Pursuit card live on camera, try to answer it in front of you guys without cutting, hopefully get it right, not embarrass myself. And since we're talking about a French film in Vertige, let's go ahead and do the international category on the card. Makes some sense. Here's our question. As part of a hazing ritual in 2016's Raw, protagonist Justine is forced to eat the raw kidney of what animal? This is interesting because I have seen Raw. We've talked about it on the channel, and honestly, a really good example of new French extremity. So that's kind of fortuitous in this question. I don't select the questions ahead of time. I pull a card out, and whatever's on it is what we're talking about here. So this is just kind of pure dumb luck that we're talking about something that is new French extremity here. And this is a movie that I enjoy very much. We did talk about it on the channel, but I'm going to be honest with you, off the top of my head, I don't really remember which animal it was. That's a whole subplot about how the movie starts and how they're hazing him by making Justine, a vegetarian, eat an animal part, in this case a kidney, and I don't remember what animal it was. So I'm going to be taking a guess on that. By the way, side note, Ange, when they gave us the Vertige recommendation, they also mentioned Raw, but I had looked at Raw elsewhere on the channel, and so even Ange would say Raw is a really excellent example of new French extremity, and I would agree in that sense. That one's a lot more gruesome and has a lot more of what I expect to find in new French extremity. So if you haven't seen that one, I would definitely highly recommend that one. Although it's not for the weak-stomached, as you can guess probably from this question. But getting back to the question, what is the animal? I have a guess. It's not a shot in the dark. It's just kind of where my gut's saying, but I don't feel confident about it. But lock in your guess if you know, great. But lock in whatever your guess is going to be because I'm about to answer. Locked in? Cool? Okay. So my guess is a sheep. I think it's a sheep kidney. And the card says rabbit. Rabbit. And I'll be honest with you, even reading the answer, it doesn't click for me. I'm like, oh, that's right, of course, it's rabbit. I don't have it. I don't have that at all. So maybe I need to rewatch Raw. It's been a while since I've checked it out. But it seems like a lot of questions about Raw come up in these cards. That's interesting. The person who made this game must have really liked that movie. But it's a great movie. Check it out if you can. Check out Vertige if you can find it. It's again, definitely worth your time, definitely worth a watch. Really beautifully shot and lots of good tension in it. So check that one out as well. I want to thank Ange for giving me that recommendation. I want to thank you guys for sticking around to the end of the video. If you've got other recommendations, French or otherwise, by all means leave them in the comments below. I'll add them to the list if I haven't seen them before, and I'll probably do a video about them at some point in time. But until then, I'm going to say, class dismissed.